Hi guys, so this is part of the Safe Space series that I've been talking about on my Instagram that I'm going to start doing, because I think from a male health standpoint, we've learned to not talk about things, we've learned to bury our heads in the sand, and in doing that, we don't actually deal with these problems. And for a lot of guys, it will affect us. There's certain things that we can't avoid. In the same way that women can't avoid the menopause, there are certain things that we can't avoid. And because we don't deal with them, they create further problems. And it's something that I want to explore to show that it is okay to talk about these things, and to hopefully, if you are suffering with certain things that we're going to cover in this series, that it gives you some help and some guidance, and to let you know you're not alone. And some of the statistics are actually quite shocking, which you'll learn about today. And today's video, we're going to be talking about erectile dysfunction. So as you can see, I've got someone with me. So this is my partner, Dina, who I'll let her do a bit of an intro as to who she is. And what we're going to be talking about today is erectile dysfunction. So if you're not sure, erectile dysfunction is where your ability to get either any type of erection or a full erection, or the ability, you can still get an erection, but you then can't climax or orgasm. So there's a range of ways that erectile dysfunction can affect you as a man. And like I said, some of the statistics are quite shocking. So for men over the age of 30, 50% of us at some point will experience some short-term form of erectile dysfunction. And if you're over the age of 40, 20% of men have full erectile dysfunction. So if we lined up 10 men over the age of 40, there's going to be at least 2 of them that can't sustain or maintain an erection without some sort of intervention like medication. And that's quite significant if you think about it. But where do you hear people talking about erectile dysfunction? We don't, because it's embarrassing. And the reason I've got D here is because most of erectile dysfunction is something that's mainly going to affect you if you're in a relationship. If you're not and you can't perform, that's one thing, but when you're in a relationship and you can't perform, it adds all sorts of different layers of stress. So before we sort of talk about what I want to talk about, I'll let Dee introduce herself, talk about who she is, what she does, and obviously she can pimp out her social media. So
Pimp out social media.
Why not?
Yeah, well, I'm mainly a women's health coach, so I help women just navigate through hormonal issues, get them fit, strong. I do nutrition, run a gym, but there are some elements where I do help men get to the bottom of their own issues in terms of fitness and well-being. But yeah, you can follow me at D60 Coaching, but I'm really focused on helping women navigate, communicating better, and sorting their lives out so they feel in control, which ultimately will make your relationship stronger.
Yeah, she's selling herself short as I expected that she would. She's also qualified in compassionate inquiry, which is a type of therapy. She is far capable of more than what she gives herself credit for, but that's what we've been doing. So, this is how today's going to play out. It is not scripted because we've not really spoke about what we're going to speak about, but I want it that way to make it more realistic. So, I'm going to be honest, and we're going to share an experience where erectile dysfunction has affected us. And how we're going to do it is I'm going to summarise what happened. I'm going to let Dee then give her side of how she thought, felt, and things like that. Then I'll explain it from my side, which will make sense why I'm doing it in this order. And then that will probably lead to a point where we'll probably be asking each other some questions off the back of it. We are.
You better not cry.
I was about to say, it could get emotional because this is raw, like this is straight up. But the one thing, again, something I will talk about in the series is obviously therapy is something that I'm going through. I have tried therapy before, and I'll be honest, it didn't work, so I didn't fully commit to it, whereas this time I am more into it. And I think one of the biggest things that has helped a ton in our relationship is trying to have open communication. And I get it, there's a fear element which will make sense when I talk about my experience with what happened. But if you generally have that love, care and compassion for your partner, you should be able to talk to them no matter what it is. And this is hopefully going to give you an insight as to how that can work. And then, like I said, we'll just play it out as it goes. So, the situation that happened. So, 4 years this November? Yeah,
When
4
did you
years
go
ago.
Vegas?
That's
22.
what I'm trying to figure out.
3 years.
Really?
2022.
So 3 years ago, this coming November, we went to Vegas. It was our first couples holiday. So we've got, I call it a blended family. There's 5 kids between us, and this was the first time that we were having just us time specifically. We were going to Vegas for a week. It's something where whilst we were there, I proposed, and to give a bit of context and background, I think it's safe to say we have a very highly active sex life, and we still do. Even up until the point where we went away, we still tick this box a lot. We'll have sex twice a day, easily, and there's been days we've hit double digits. And the whole time we were in Vegas, we had sex once, and that once was after a day of drinking quite a lot as well. And then when we got back, things went back to normal. And that's just a brief summary of a rundown of what happened. We went away for our first couples holiday. It was the first chance for us to be alone, together, and everything went tits up, is the basic way of answering it. Now, I've kept a lot of information out because it's important from my side to explain why it affected me the way it did. But like I said, I want to start by hearing Dee's account of how that made her think and feel and what she experienced for that time while we were away. So, go for it.
I felt like you didn't want me anymore.
Yeah.
I'd planned a sexy holiday. I even took sexy underwear.
Yeah.
And it was no contact, which was really hard. Because we were really physical, and that just made me question what was wrong with me. Do you not want me anymore? Do you not find me attractive? And at no point was I thinking, what's wrong with you and what's going on? Obviously I knew physically you were struggling with how you saw yourself, but we just, that intimacy had completely gone. And then that just makes me go overkill because I'm trying to make sure you still wanted me. And then you propose and still, laying in bed naked, watching the telly. You weren't even putting your hands on me.
Yeah.
Despite you laying there naked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I felt like it was, I just wasn't physically attracted to you at all.
And I think that's why I wanted to start with Dee talking rather than me, because if I gave my side of the story first, I don't want to say it justifies, but it explains. But what Dee has said, I guarantee if you're a guy that has also experienced some form of erectile dysfunction, I can almost guarantee if you've got a partner, they probably feel the exact same way that Dee felt. And the worst thing is it had nothing to do with her whatsoever, really. It was all on me. And it's there's some common causes that happen that make men have erectile dysfunction. Now, yes, at one end of the extreme, your hormones are ruined. You can't physically get an erection. That is one end of it. But the reality is, there are things we do in our lifestyle and there's stresses that we place upon ourselves that basically our body can't operate optimally and it can't function correctly because we're pulling it in all different directions. So it's just doing its best to maintain homeostasis. So to give a bit of feedback, or like to sort of give my side of the story, as I mentioned, it was our first week away. It was the first time we were going to have just us time. And I knew, we already were getting a decent amount of sex as it was, and now we're going to have no kids to worry about. We're in a hotel, we're in Vegas, we can have a lot of sex. So already, as Dee's pointed out, I do have a lot of self-image issues. So in the 3 months building up to it, I really started to dig deep to try and get my body in the best shape that I could. Now again, if we go further down the line, I've done a lot of hormone damage to myself from years of being a pro fighter, forcing my weight down, overexerting my body. So my metabolism doesn't work properly, basically. So for 3 months, I went on a really aggressive carnivore style diet. I was literally eating just steaks and eggs, and I was literally eating once, sometimes twice a day. I was training pretty much every day, sometimes twice a day, because I wanted to look as good as possible if I was going to spend a lot of time naked around it. Alongside that, I planned that I wanted to propose. And for me, that had several levels of pressure. So I suppose the first level of pressure was I also knew through trying to loosely bring up the topic that Dee wasn't really interested in marriage. It's not her thing. So I was like, okay, this can go one of two ways really badly. In that she goes, thanks, but no thanks. Or she kind of just goes, yeah, because she feels pressured into saying yes because I've asked. So there was a big element in me that was like, do I do it? Do I not? Because for me, it's a thing. Like it's a level of commitment in a relationship. So for me, it was something. And then to sort of hear that value wasn't shared, I was then kind of like, should I do it? Should I not? The other element of it is obviously Dee has other kids. So I had to try and be, I don't want to say snidey, but I had to get each of them one at a time and say, look, I love your mum, I want to propose to her, I want to get married. Do you have objections to that? And obviously that in itself was very stressful. It was nothing because they were all like, as long as you're happy, as long as mum's happy, you treat her well, of course we've got no issue with you proposing. But that build up of, I've got to get their permission, because I didn't want it to be a case of I proposed to her, then we come home from Vegas and mum's engaged, because that could go really badly. And I wanted to make sure that I had everybody's blessings first before I actually asked in the first place. So there was all that pressure on the build up to it. And then I planned for us to do it whilst we were at the Grand Canyon. And there was the pressure then of, where do I do it? How do I do it? Is the weather going to be good? And the answer was fucking no, quite typically. Although at the point where I did it, the weather was okay, it was just bloody cold. And then it's that whole replaying through your head, what if she says no? What if it doesn't go to plan? Now, how awkward is it going to be if she says no and we're now stuck 3 hours away from the hotel, and the hotel is the other side of the world? So it's like, mid-holiday, what do we do? And I suppose the weird thing is, building up to it, before going away, I didn't feel like I didn't feel any different than normal. It wasn't, the weird thing about it, there's no real warning signs until you get to that moment where you're like, right, I've got her to myself, let's go. And it's like, testing, hello, and nothing happens. And it's something that women can't appreciate as a man. If you can't get an erection when you want one, it was probably the most soul-destroying moment ever, especially when it's like, right, we do this 2-3 times a day, no problem every day, why can't you do it now? And the trouble is that then creates like a snowball downhill effect, and it just gets worse. And then it sort of got me to the point where I was scared to not touch, but I was scared to like be intimate, because what if I try and get intimate and then things start going somewhere and then I can't get an erection, and then I'm having to stop it because I've started it. In my head, I'm like, she's going to think there's something wrong or something's bad if I'm trying to initiate sex and then I just stop because I can't get sex. It even got as far as to the point of, we had a jacuzzi in our room and I couldn't physically get in the jacuzzi with her. Like I physically was like, no, I couldn't. And one of the main reasons we got the room is because it had a jacuzzi in it in the first place. So, it was horrible, because I was suffering in silence because I didn't feel comfortable going, babe, I don't know what's going on, I can't get an erection. Because as a man, that's one of the worst things you can ever let out of your mouth, right? It's almost like you're admitting you're not a man. It's horrible. And I then obviously didn't want to bring up the conversation because I didn't want to be in that situation where it's like, I don't want to say confrontation, but it's an awkward conversation to have when you're on the other side of the world, stuck in another country with somebody that could end up being a bad conversation. And I think for me, the worst thing was, we got back off holiday, and yeah, once a day or two of the jet lag getting out of place and back to routine, I'd sort of gone off, I sort of went, well, screw it, like, there's no worse that can happen, so whatever. So I went back to eating whatever I want, drinking whatever I want, and literally within a space of 3 days, he was awake again, and it was back to normal because that pressure had gone. And this is what I mean when I say, you know, the statistics say 50% of men over the age of 30 have some sort of erectile dysfunction. It's not a case of once it doesn't work, it stops working. A lot of the time, it is down to what you place on yourself. You know, I was mentally stressed, I was physically stressed because I was overtraining and under-eating in an attempt to get myself in a certain shape, which was putting more stress and pressure on myself. I was then obviously worried about popping the question and how that was going to go. And all of that in the background took over the operating systems that, although I felt okay in myself, my body couldn't operate properly. And like I say, it literally took 3 days for it to fix by me literally taking that pressure off myself and just going, no, screw it, and going back to normal. But I think that's the issue. A lot of guys don't understand that's what's happening, and they don't take the pressure off themselves. They just actually make it worse because they either bury their head in the sand or then they over worry and overthink about it. So yeah, that was our brief soiree into like erectile dysfunction and how it's affected us. We've not had any other instances other than that, have we, really?
I think there was a couple of moments, but it was all stress related, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, you then felt comfortable saying you don't know what's going on, but there was, I think, just one other incident.
Yeah, and I think, like in those moments, it's in that moment of frustration of we're starting to get intimate, nothing's happening, and then I feel bad. So then you have to kind of go, I don't know why it's not happening, and then, but even then, it's then just been a case of like we then just stop and don't talk about it. It's just like, okay, we'll leave it. And I think
the last time actually that led you to doing your testosterone test because it had tanked.
Yeah.
That was the only other time because we were like, we don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Maybe it was because you have abused your metabolism, and I think that's the bigger issue to highlight as well. You're unable to be rational about what could be going on because you are making it a big thing because it is your manhood. It is, you are now not functioning as a man and catastrophizing in your own head and putting yourself down, whatever it is. But then if you could step out of that and say, well, what else is going on in my life? What am I doing?
Yeah.
Which nobody is ever doing.
No, like I say, as men, we just bury our heads in the sand and just go, well, we're taught 3 things from a young age. Suck it up. It's no one's problem but your own. Those things don't happen, it's embarrassing. So we kind of have it drummed into us from a young age that as a man, you can't share your problems because there isn't a space for you to do it safely because your mates will take the piss out of you for it. You can't go to your parents because they're your parents, and you don't have that comfort in going to your doctor.
But then maybe that's, this is where the CI stuff comes in, and hopefully you benefit from that as well. But if you're having to joke about it, it's the same as joking about your fat friend in the pub. You're the butt of somebody's jokes because internally there's a huge stigma of shame and embarrassment about being that person, that guy that can't get it up. And you're saying, you're taught from a young age not to talk about it. But then I think for both women and men, we've all grown up with all these expectations of who you should be, how a relationship should be, and you just kind of got to put your head down and get on with it because somebody's always got it worse. And then from the male point of view, you've got a major problem, you can't function in a relationship because you can't even have sex with your partner. And then for the women, you're just a failure because you can't get your man hard, so there's something wrong with you, or maybe he's talking to, both parties are making the whole situation a lot worse rather than saying, obviously there's something going on, it's a difficult subject to talk about, but I'm here.
Yeah.
Like, let's explore what's going on, eat some more food, have you tested, look at your stress, what is going on in your life.
I think that's kind of like why I wanted to do this video more than anything, is because, as we've both highlighted, both of us separately were saying it's obviously my fault, it's something to do with me, and neither of us felt comfortable talking to each other. Now obviously from my side point, it was me, it was something wrong with me, but that's not what obviously Dee saw and felt. But again, you may not have experienced erectile dysfunction yet, or maybe you have. And if you have, if you've not had those conversations with your partner, how's your relationship now? Because if that then carries on as something that's unresolved, it then carries on in the relationship. And has that created distance? Has that caused problems? You know, I'm somebody who naturally keeps stuff to himself. And some of that has been what I've learned from my childhood. Some of it has just been something I've been growing up, is to just, everything's inwards. I don't share a lot of stuff really. But what I can say is, starting to open up and talk more, I can honestly say it's only benefited the relationship, because it helps Dee understand me better. And I can honestly say I've never felt, when I've opened up, I know that men don't, because the fear is my partner now going to ridicule me? Is my partner going to look at me different? Is my partner now going to not love me because I'm this way or that way? And the reality is, it's not that at all. It's like we have that fear, but honestly, if you turn to your partner and go, I'm struggling, this is what's happening to me, and their first response is to have an issue with that, maybe you're not in the right relationship, because the whole point of a relationship is to be supportive in some way or another. And like Dee said, the last time it happened, we spoke about it and we looked at, okay, what's going on, which led to me to get my testosterone checked. And my testosterone was flatline. And obviously that now means I'm on TRT to bring it to normal levels. But for me, at the point when we did testosterone, that was like last year. So there was a good like year and a half from Vegas to that happening. And at the time when I got my testosterone check, I was eating healthy. I would say work stress and life stress was lower, because I'd changed jobs. I'd started working here at the gym. My previous job was very stressful. It was non-stop. My training, you know, I was only training 3-4 times a week at the most. So I wasn't overloading my body. I'd say we had a pretty healthy sleep routine, because we were, you know, we get an hour's nap in the day, and then we only get 6 or 7 hours at night, but it's decent quality. So at that time, I'm ticking all the good boxes for me to go, okay, this is something more. And knowing what I'd done to my body previously is why I went, okay, I'm just gonna go on to TRT. And the important thing is, if you do get your bloods tested and it's low, don't automatically worry or fear that you've got to go straight onto TRT, because you should always look at your lifestyle first. It's like when somebody comes to us that wants to lose weight and they go, I think I should be taking Ozempic or semaglutide. It's like, no, you need to stop shoving the fork in your mouth every half an hour and actually get off your ass and move and look at your stress. I think the biggest difference in the last 10 years is convenience food is cheap and it's non-nutritious. It's just stuff you can shovel in. People are under a lot more stress, which means it leads people to find vices to deal with that stress, such as drugs and alcohol.
And porn.
And porn, yeah, definitely. And in general, we are in worse situations because we've got higher stress, lower activity. In some cases, people have more disposable income, so rather than taking the time to go and buy all the ingredients and make your meals from scratch, it's just easier to go to a restaurant or get a takeaway on the way home, so you haven't got to deal with doing more stuff. And it's those situations that are causing the problem. It's learning to undo those that will have an effect. And if you are somebody that has experience, or maybe you're currently experiencing erectile dysfunction, that doesn't mean you've now got to use Viagra for the rest of your life.
And that can also cause a problem as well, taking Viagra when you don't actually need it.
Yeah, true. So always take into account, where is your lifestyle now? You know, how much sleep are you getting? What's your diet like? Are you exercising? Are you active? Have you got stress at home? Have you got stress at work? You've got to look at all these things and go, right, where can I adapt these? And I promise, in doing that, you will see a benefit. Like I said, there is a subsection of people where no matter what you change, I'm an example of my testosterone. No matter what I change, my test isn't going up, so I've got to supplement it. And in the same way, for certain people, like I said, 20% of men over the age of 40, there are going to be 2 out of every 10 people that will need medical assistance, but that's only 2 out of 10. You know, the other 3 people that are experiencing it, it will be because of their lifestyle stress as to why they're having those struggles. So that's covered, obviously, the situation and some things that probably as couples will affect it. I've sort of covered the questions that I was going to ask you, really, in things that we've said, but have you got any other questions you want to ask me about it, or the experience, or?
I don't think I've got any specific questions, but in terms of like just opening up to me, because that's a difficult thing to do.
Massively.
Like it's obvious there's a problem because it's not working.
Yeah.
But then I think for women, it's like, what tips would you give to a woman to not bring, like, do you want attention brought to it, or is it safe to go, look, shall we try something else? Because I think it's important not to just distance from that intimacy, but if your partner's penis isn't working, I think it's easy, like for you, it's like, there's a big battle there because your response would be just to roll over it creates that distance.
Yeah.
Because you're struggling with it. And then for me, it's like trying not to respond in the way where I'm making you feel even more inferior than you already feel. So then, do we push the conversation? Do you just say, look, okay, something's not working, should we just kind of, like, what's the tips for people that in an intimate relationship where the relationship isn't one to shit?
So yeah, like the honest answer is it takes work from both sides, because, you know, if we flip it round and let's say I was the female and D was the male, and I noticed that, you know, we're not having any intimacy, in reality, yes, you should say, look, babe, I know something's wrong, let's talk about it. But as a bloke, our instant reaction is to go, I don't want to talk about it. So yes, I do think women need to approach and talk to their partners, and hopefully you would understand the best way to talk to your partner. But it's important to let your partner know that you're aware there's something wrong, and it's like, as hard as it is better to talk about it than just go, like, it's one thing to go, babe, I know there's a problem, I'll leave you to deal with it, because that then sort of gives permission for him to bury his head in the sand, and it's then not going to resolve the problem. All that's going to happen is you're now sitting there going, it's been 3 weeks since we've been intimate, he's now not even hugging me or kissing me because he's honestly, when it happens to a guy, it is like an inwards collapse. It's like when you watch the buildings blow up from the inside to collapse them, that is what is happening to us mentally and emotionally when our penis stops working. Like, it's the only way I can explain it, because the one job we have as a man we now can't do is literally it, and it's out of our control. You know, yes, there's some men that can't even get aroused, as in like horny, but for most of us, we can still get horny, we can still get turned on, but then we can't do anything with it, and that's the worst. So don't just say, like, my advice would be, don't just go, babe, I know something's going on, I'm here when you're ready, because you're now giving them permission to not be ready. What you want to say is, you know, let's sit down and discuss it, and that will get them to do it. And as guys, I think you've got to learn to actually have those conversations and trust that if your partner is the right person, they're not going to ridicule you. They're not going to be messaging their mates going, oh my God, he's that pathetic, he can't get hard on. Hopefully they will genuinely care enough to go, okay, what can we look at? But I think the most important thing for both parties to understand is going to the doctor for medication is not the first port of call. I think it's too easy that people do that. We see it in all elements of health. Someone's blood pressure is a bit raised, they whack them on statins. Next thing you know, they're now also on cholesterol medication because the statins is messing with their cholesterol. When actually, if you just put them on a monitored diet and steady exercise, it brings the blood pressure down. Same as people now that are jumping on Ozempic to lose weight. Yes, it helps for a handful of people, but I have seen the downside of people taking Ozempic and semaglutide. They're all the same drug, just different names. but I'm seeing the health effects it's having, the long-term health effects, where it's starting to make people go blind. It's messing with bone density. It messes your metabolism. It has all these negative side effects, but people are just jumping on it because it's a quick fix, and it's not. There's a crack in the wall of a dam, and you're putting a plaster on it. Like, it's only going to hold for so long before it stops working.
It just comes back to bearing in your head, doesn't it? At the end
Yeah,
of the
exactly.
day, it's not going to be a solution because the problem is still there and you're not actually fixing the deeper issues.
No.
And even in terms of like erectile dysfunction, that is quickly going to lead on to mental health issues because you're either going to become depressed or overly anxious about what's going on.
I think the other thing people need to appreciate, if we look at the two main types of erectile dysfunction medication, you have Viagra or you have Cialis. The difference is Viagra is short term, so it works for a few hours. Cialis is something that works for 24 to 48 hours. The doctors will normally prescribe Viagra before they prescribe Cialis. Now, a lot of drugs.
Please don't go and order this stuff.
Yeah,
literally. Like,
a lot of these drugs, your body builds a tolerance to them quite quickly. So I think Viagra starts at 20 milligrams a tablet. So let's say you buy a box of Viagra, which, I'm going to be honest, you can go to your chemist and buy Viagra in the UK. Obviously in America it's different, but you can just go and buy it. And yeah, by all means, you could take one and you're like, yeah, cool, had sex, that's great. So you then rely on that, but the trouble you're going to have is very soon your body's used to that dose. So now you need to take 50 milligrams. And very soon your body will get used to that dose. Obviously, the more you expose yourself to it, the more of a tolerance it builds. And then it'll get to the point where Viagra stops working. So it may mask the problem for a short period of time, but if the background stress and everything else is still happening, it's not going to stop the medication from, the medication can't just keep working. You can't just keep upping the dose because it does things to your body. So that's why it's important. My main message is if you are experiencing erectile dysfunction, firstly, look at your lifestyle and what could potentially be causing it. And the excuse of, well, it is what it is rubbish. You can always get another job. You can always go on a diet. You can always go to the gym. I refuse anybody that tells me they can't find 30 minutes, 3 days a week to get outside and move. It's rubbish, you tell yourself. You can always find a new relationship. And this is stuff that people don't want to hear, but it's your life. Are you going to allow those things that are changeable to carry on and make you downward slide? Because ultimately, I think the worst statistic I can give you is 73% of suicides are men. But only 26% of NHS referrals for mental health in the UK are men. So there's a big disparity between 26% and 73%. Men are taking their lives because of the pressure and the stress they're placed under, and because they don't deal with childhood traumas, and they have these effects of low testosterone, erectile dysfunction, and they're not dealing with it. So first things first is evaluate, why is this happening? And secondly, if you're in a relationship, be open about it, because there's two sides of it. And as Dee started, when we asked her, she felt it was her fault. She felt it was an issue with her or an issue with the relationship. And it never is. It's never their fault. And that's not me saying it's our fault, but it's something that's affecting us. It's not because of them. And I don't want to say you need to be considerate of your partner, but you need to be considerate of your partner because you're both in this boat together, and if you're not sharing these things which are significant, it is going to cause you to drift apart, and it could cause the end of a relationship. It's probably the best relationship you've ever had. And then, and like I say, for men, learning to talk is the hardest thing, which is why I want to do this series, to show you that I've just told you that I couldn't get an erection. For a bloke, that's the most embarrassing thing. And I'm putting this on YouTube that literally everybody in the world can now watch this and go,
but it's going to happen to pretty much everybody. At some point, you are going to deal with that issue.
And that's the point.
The same way every woman is going to go through the menopause, and it's important for men to understand what impact that's going to have. But I think for whoever's in the relationship, no matter what is going on, you have to take responsibility for your own feelings, what is actually going on, and the changes that you can make. Because although it wasn't anything to do with me, with you not being able to get a hold on, I made it about me,
Yeah.
and it's having the. It's not like it's been grown up enough to say, right, let me take an outside look at this. This isn't because of me. This is something that may be going on for him. But we've all got so good at making everything so personal. We don't give ourselves a chance just to stop and say, right, what is going on? What could he be going through? How is he feeling about that? And the same for guys and women. It works both ways. And then it's going, right, I'm responsible for this and what is not happening. I'm responsible for the quality of my relationship. I'm responsible for how intimate we are. I'm responsible for my own mental health, my activity, what my body looks like and how I feel. And as you said, it's taking a look at what needs to change. Because that is one thing that you are able to do. Stop, take a look and assess what you're actually doing and the things that you're putting on yourself. It's never going to be easy to have that conversation and say, like, I'm really struggling right now. That is the hardest thing for anybody to say, let alone a man going, I'm really struggling, I don't know what's going on, I need to talk to somebody. Like, that is going to be the hardest step.
And I think the last thing I want to highlight, as I mentioned, within 3 days of getting back off holiday, I was back to operating normally. Because I took all that stress, I started eating properly again. It literally took 72 hours and I was back to normal. Now, if I'd done the bury my head in the sand, who knows where I could be right now. I appreciate that was a long time ago, but if I'd kept my mouth shut, if I'd not experienced those things, we could be in a different boat right now. But
we probably wouldn't be together because
massive.
I would have made it about myself and no
Yeah.
sex life, and you would have made it about you because you would have thought the worst and I'm going to go and find somebody else, and
yeah,
it just goes to shit.
yeah,
In the politest way, it's just there is no relationship if there is no communication or intimacy.
So, as a guy, if you are experiencing some sort of erectile dysfunction, it can reverse very quickly if you put the effort in to change it. I don't want to say that if you're sitting there and you're suffering erectile dysfunction, I don't want you to think, oh, okay, in that case then, by the weekend I'm going to be better again, because it might not work like that. But what I'm saying is, if you focus on the problems and change them and try and remove as many of the obstacles as possible, it can and has had a massive difference to how it physically affected me. So we've spoke for a really long time, so apologies. However, I'm not sorry, because I'm hoping that you have took the time to sit and watch this with your partner, or even if you sat and watched it by yourself as a guy, or maybe as a woman, maybe you've seen this and gone, actually, I want to watch it by myself to take this on board. Hopefully you've learned something from this, and it's something that can start. I want you to have better conversations with your partner, because it's going to change you as well as the dynamic of your relationship, and it will always be for the better. It may be painful at first. There's been many conversations we've had where we've both been crying because the subject that we're discussing, but ultimately it's what then happens off the back of that and how it affects you and you as a couple moving forwards. So yeah, obviously if you've got any questions, drop them in the comments below. Obviously if you don't want to do that and you want to talk more privately, if you head to my Instagram, or you can head to Dee's Instagram, I'll put them both in the description. Feel free to follow us, feel free to DM us to ask us questions. And like I say, keep an eye out for the following the series. So I'm going to be looking at the andropause, so that's the male version of the menopause, which does happen to all men. I'm going to be talking about men's mental health, because it's something that we don't talk about. I may invite Dee back for other videos, because Dee is a therapist. She does compassionate inquiry, so you may get to witness us do a little mini session with her and me, which will probably be the worst idea ever, but hopefully it'll be a good one. But yeah, I do this not just about making you bigger and stronger. I want to help. I don't want to say fix men, because that's such a bad term, but
yeah, you don't need
to show you that it is okay. Like, this word gets thrown around so much, but the word trauma, we all experience something that affects us in a negative way, whether that is something small or something large. I've heard stories of some people have told me stories of their life, and I'm like, I don't even understand how you're still on this planet because of what you've experienced. And it's understanding that opening up about these problems is never a bad thing, it's only a good thing. As somebody who's tried to kill himself 3 times, and if I'm honest, the last time failed, otherwise I wouldn't be here, learning to open up and talk has had a massive benefit because I'm still here. And yes, I have hard days because I'm having to confront, especially now that I'm going through therapy, I have dark times because I have to confront the things that are problems. But with every time that I confront them, I'm feeling better off the back of it because I'm dealing with it, and it's having a massive positive effect on my mental health. So
I think the benefit to that is, and I'll just finish with this, is when you do confront the things that you have experienced, trauma, whatever you want to call it, you then understand what you're making that mean, because generally you're making it mean something about yourself and who you are as a person and your worth in the world. And that's how you end up growing up. And I think that's really important to get across, because that leads to the negative cycle, because you never believe you're good enough, and so therefore just make everything your problem. Hence why I made it about me. But yeah, it's one of those things.
yeah, cool. Right, we'll sign this off now because it's gone on way too long. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you for the next one. Thanks, guys.